I stood in the middle of my grandson's graduation party while hundreds of people laughed at me and my wife like we were the evening's entertainment. My own son clapped for him, and my daughter-in-law smiled before saying we had contributed absolutely nothing to their success. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply reached into my jacket, slipped a sealed envelope back into my pocket, took my wife's trembling hand, and quietly walked away. None of them knew that the envelope I chose not to hand over contained a secret worth $1 million, and by the next morning every financial privilege they had taken for granted was about to disappear forever. My name is Elliot. I'm 60 years old, and I live in Franklin, Tennessee with my wife, Clara. If you had asked me 10 years ago what the greatest achievement of my life was, I wouldn't have mentioned my business, my savings, or the house we spent 3 decades paying off. I would have smiled and said, my family. Looking back now, I wish I had understood that loving people and being valued by them are not always the same thing. Clara and I have been married for 38 years. She has been my best friend since we were both in our early 20s. We never had a glamorous life. There were no luxury vacations across Europe or sports cars sitting in our driveway. We built everything the slow way through overtime, sacrifices, and thousands of ordinary days where we chose responsibility over comfort. I spent most of my career running a commercial electrical contracting company. The work was demanding. Some weeks I barely had a day off. I climbed ladders, crawled through unfinished buildings, worked during freezing winters and unbearable Tennessee summers. There were birthdays I arrived late to and anniversaries that ended with me answering emergency phone calls from job sites. But every time I looked at my family, I told myself it was worth it. My wife never complained. She understood exactly why I worked so hard. Whenever I apologized for missing another dinner or another school event, she'd squeeze my hand and say, "You're building a future for all of us." Those words kept me going for decades. Our only son, Derek, grew up wanting for nothing. He always had good schools, clean clothes, birthday parties with his friends, and parents who showed up whenever they could. Was I perfect? Not even close. But I never stopped trying. When Derek married Vanessa, I welcomed her into our family without hesitation. I wanted her to feel like she had gained another set of parents, not just in-laws. Clara treated her like a daughter from the very first day. Then, a few years later, our grandson Logan was born. Holding him for the first time felt like getting a second chance at fatherhood. I promised myself I would be there for every milestone I had missed with Derek because of work. His first baseball game, his school concerts, weekend fishing trips, ice cream after report cards, every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation. If Logan needed me, I wanted him to know Grandpa would always show up. As the years passed, I quietly became the person everyone relied on. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone needed advice, they called me. If an unexpected expense appeared, I somehow found a way to make it disappear. I never kept score. Honestly, I didn't even want anyone to know how much Clara and I were doing behind the scenes. To me, family wasn't a business transaction. Love wasn't supposed to come with invoices. Clara used to ask me one question over and over again. "Elliot, are you sure we're helping them? Or are we making it too easy?" Every single time, I gave her the same answer. "They're our family." She would nod, but I could always tell she wasn't convinced. The truth is, Clara noticed things long before I did. She noticed how Derek only called when he needed something. She noticed Vanessa slowly becoming colder every year. She noticed Logan spending less and less time talking to us as he got older. I saw those same moments, but I explained every one of them away. I blamed busy schedules, work, school, life. I refused to believe the people Clara and I had spent decades loving could ever stop appreciating us. I had no idea that the biggest lesson of my life wasn't waiting somewhere in the distant future. It was waiting for me on one beautiful summer evening, at my grandson's graduation party. People usually assume that if someone reaches retirement with a comfortable life, they must have gotten lucky. I can tell you from experience, luck had very little to do with mine. Everything Clara and I owned came from years of saying no to ourselves so we could say yes to our family. When my business finally started making decent money, our accountant encouraged us to celebrate. "Buy the lake house," he said. "You've earned it." Instead, I bought a used pickup truck and put the rest into Derek's college fund. I still remember the day he opened his acceptance letter to the University of Tennessee. He hugged me so hard I almost lost my balance. "Dad, I can't believe it." "You earned it," I told him. He looked worried for a moment. "But tuition?" I smiled. "Don't worry about tuition." He had no idea Clara and I had been quietly saving for nearly 18 years. Every overtime shift, every bonus, every tax refund, every extra dollar had gone into that account. By the time Derek graduated, Clara and I had paid almost $240,000 between tuition, housing, books, transportation, and living expenses. We never asked for a penny back. Not once. After graduation, Derek found a decent job and life seemed to be moving exactly the way Clara and I had hoped. Then he met Vanessa. She was intelligent, confident, and ambitious. At first, I genuinely liked her. She laughed easily, she was polite, she always thanked us for dinner. When Derek proposed, I was proud of him. A few months later, he sat across from me at our kitchen table. "Dad, weddings are more expensive than I thought." I already knew where the conversation was heading. "How much are you short?" He hesitated. "About 40,000. Clara looked at me. Without saying a word, we both already knew what would happen. I wrote the check. The wedding was beautiful. Nobody there knew who had paid for most of it. That was exactly how I wanted it. A year later, Derek and Vanessa found the house they wanted. Beautiful neighborhood, excellent schools, far outside their budget. Again, they came to us. "Dad," I laughed before he even finished. "How much this time?" He looked embarrassed. "The down payment." Clara gently squeezed my arm beneath the table. We had been planning a 2-week vacation through the Pacific Northwest. It would have been our first real vacation in almost 15 years. Instead, we canceled the trip. That money became the down payment on Derek's first home. Watching them carry boxes into that house made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Or at least, that's what I believed. A few years later, Logan was born. The moment I held him, I completely understood why people say grandchildren steal your heart. Mine certainly did. He had Derek's eyes, Vanessa's smile, and tiny little hands that wrapped around one of my fingers. I whispered something only he could hear. "I'll always take care of you." I meant every word. As Logan grew older, I wanted opportunities for him that Derek had never even dreamed about, so I quietly opened an education investment account in his name. Every single month, money automatically went into it. No birthdays skipped, no holidays missed, rain or shine. The deposits continued. Clara once asked me, "Are you ever going to tell them?" I shook my head. "No." "Why?" "Because if they know, it changes the gift." She smiled sadly. "You always think the best of people." "I'd rather be disappointed than become suspicious of everyone." She reached across the table and held my hand. "I just don't want someone to mistake your kindness for obligation." At the time, I honestly thought she was worrying too much. I wish she hadn't been. As the years passed, the support quietly grew. When Derek's company reduced bonuses one year, I began sending him a monthly transfer. He believed it came from an old investment partnership. It didn't. It came directly from my account. When Vanessa decided she wanted to stay home with Logan instead of returning to work, I respected her choice. But choices have costs. Without telling anyone, I began covering expenses they struggled to manage. Every year I paid their homeowners insurance. I handled their property taxes before the due date. I paid the supplemental health insurance for the entire family. Whenever Logan needed braces, sports equipment, summer programs, or a new laptop for school, the money somehow appeared. To them, life simply seemed to work out. To me, it meant another postponed dream. Clara had always wanted to remodel our kitchen. Every Christmas, she'd cut out magazine photos and leave them on the dining room table. White cabinets, a larger island, big windows overlooking the backyard. Every year I'd tell her, "Maybe next year." She never complained. She'd smile, fold the pictures, and quietly put them away. Looking back now, that hurts me more than writing another check ever did. Because while I was busy making life easier for everyone else, the woman who stood beside me through every difficult year kept putting her own dreams on hold without asking for anything in return. Still, neither of us regretted helping our family. We believed we were building something bigger than money. We believed we were building loyalty, trust, gratitude. We couldn't have been more wrong. The saddest part wasn't that Derek, Vanessa, and Logan accepted our sacrifices. The saddest part was that after enough years, they stopped seeing them as sacrifices at all. To them, the help simply became normal, expected, invisible. And when kindness becomes invisible, respect usually disappears right behind it. If someone had asked me exactly when my family changed, I wouldn't have been able to answer. It wasn't one big moment. It happened one small disappointment at a time. At first, the changes were almost impossible to notice. A phone call that used to last 20 minutes suddenly became 2. Sunday dinners slowly turned into, "Sorry, Dad, we're busy." Birthday visits became text messages. Holiday hugs became quick handshakes before everyone went back to looking at their phones. I kept telling myself that life was simply getting busier. After all, Logan was growing up. Derek had more responsibility at work. Vanessa was managing the house. People get busy. That's what I believed. Clara believed something different. One evening, after another canceled family dinner, she quietly set 2 untouched plates back into the refrigerator. "They're not coming again, are they?" she asked. I forced a smile. "I'm sure something came up." She looked at me for a long moment before saying something that stayed with me. "Elliot, people always make time for what's important." I laughed it off. "They'll come next weekend." They didn't. Weeks turned into months. Whenever my phone rang, I found myself hoping it was Derek calling just to talk. Instead, the conversations almost always sounded the same. "Hey, Dad, you busy? I can make time. Actually, I wanted to ask you something." There was always a reason. The air conditioner stopped working. Logan needed a new computer. The property tax bill was higher than expected. The family SUV needed repairs. Every conversation ended with another expense. Never once did Derek ask, "Dad, how are you?" Not because he was cruel, because somewhere along the way, he had started believing I would always be there, no matter what. One afternoon, Clara and I drove to Logan's high school baseball game. We sat through all 7 innings. He played well. Afterward, dozens of parents gathered around their kids, taking pictures and celebrating. Logan walked right past us. He climbed into his parents' SUV without even noticing we were standing there. I wasn't angry, just confused. I finally waved. "Logan." He turned around. "Oh, hey, Grandpa. Great game. Thanks." He checked his phone while we talked. "I've got to go." Then he was gone. The entire conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. As we walked back to our truck, Clara slipped her hand into mine. "That hurt, didn't it?" I lied. "He's a teenager." But the truth was, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. A few months later, Vanessa invited us over for dinner. I thought maybe things were changing. Instead, I noticed something that made Clara's words echo in my head. The dining room had been completely remodeled. Brand new hardwood flooring, custom cabinets, stone countertops, designer lighting. I looked around, impressed. "This looks beautiful." Vanessa smiled proudly. We finally decided to stop settling. Then she laughed and added, "You only live once." Clara smiled politely. I smiled too, but all I could think about were the magazine pictures Clara had quietly folded away every Christmas for years. We had postponed her dream kitchen so theirs could become a reality. Nobody at that table knew that, or maybe nobody cared. Little comments started becoming more common. Vanessa once laughed when she saw my old pickup truck. "Elliot, you really should buy yourself something newer." I almost laughed. If she only knew how many times I had postponed buying a new truck because I was helping pay their bills. Another time she said, "I don't know how people survive retirement." I answered honestly. "You learn to budget." She smiled. "Well, at least we won't have to worry about that." She said it with complete confidence, as if financial security simply appeared out of thin air, as if it had nothing to do with the man sitting across the table. Then came the phone calls that bothered Clara the most. Sometimes Derek wouldn't call for 6 or 7 weeks. Then suddenly my phone would ring. "Hey, Dad." 5 minutes later, he needed money, or advice, or help fixing something. The conversation never ended with, "We miss you." It always ended with, "Thanks, Dad." Looking back now, They thanked me for solving problems. They rarely thanked me for simply being their father. Clara saw the pattern long before I accepted it. One evening, she looked across our living room and asked me a question I wasn't ready to answer. If something happened to us tomorrow, would they miss us? I answered immediately. Of course. She nodded slowly. No. They'd miss what we do for them. Her words made me uncomfortable. So I changed the subject. I didn't want to believe the woman who had known me for nearly 40 years could be right. Then Logan graduated from high school and started college. The distance grew even wider. Social media was full of pictures with friends, spring break trips, football games, campus events. I saw everything online. But weeks would go by without a single phone call. Sometimes I would text first. Hope classes are going well. Hours later, I'd get a reply. Thanks. Nothing else. No questions. No conversation. Just one word. Clara stopped asking when we'd see everyone again. I stopped bringing it up. Deep down, I think we were both afraid of hearing another excuse. Still, every month the automatic payments continued. Every bill I had promised myself I would cover was paid on time. Every deposit into Logan's education fund arrived exactly as scheduled. I convinced myself that someday when life slowed down, my family would realize everything Clara and I had quietly done for them. I believed gratitude was simply running late. I never imagined it had already been replaced by entitlement, and I certainly never imagined that the day my grandson earned his college diploma would also be the day my family publicly proved just how little they thought of us. The invitation arrived almost a month before graduation. It was printed on thick cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. Please join us in celebrating Logan Carter's graduation. The party was being held at a private lakeside resort just outside Nashville. Derek had rented the entire outdoor pavilion overlooking the water. According to the invitation, more than 200 guests had been invited. Clara smiled when she read it. This is going to be special. I smiled back. It should be. What I didn't tell her was that I had already planned a surprise that would change Logan's life forever. A week before the party, I met with my attorney. Everything had already been prepared. Inside a large ivory envelope were the official documents transferring a $1 million trust into Logan's name. The trust wasn't just cash. It included investments that would continue growing for decades. My attorney smiled as he handed me the folder. He's an incredibly fortunate young man. I hope, I replied, he understands how much he's loved. I truly believed he would. The morning of the graduation party, Clara spent extra time getting ready. She wore a navy blue dress I had bought her for our anniversary years earlier. You still think it looks nice? She asked. I looked at her and smiled. You could wear a paper bag and still be the prettiest woman there. She laughed and gently hit my shoulder. You've been using that line for 30 years. And it's been true for 30 years. She smiled the entire drive to the resort. Seeing her happy made me even more excited about the surprise waiting inside my jacket. When we arrived, the place looked beautiful. Large white tents overlooked the lake. Blue and silver decorations matched the university colors. A live jazz band played softly near the water. Servers carried trays filled with appetizers. Families posed for photographs beneath banners that read, "Congratulations, Logan." I looked around proudly. This turned out nice. Clara nodded. It really did. As we walked toward the pavilion, I noticed Logan laughing with a group of friends. He saw us. For just a second, our eyes met. I expected him to come over. Instead, he turned back to his friends without even waving. Clara pretended not to notice. I'll go congratulate Vanessa, she said softly. Vanessa greeted Clara with a quick side hug that lasted no more than a second. Oh, good. You made it. No warmth, no excitement, just obligation. Derek walked over a few minutes later. Hey, Dad? He shook my hand instead of hugging me. You doing okay? I've never been better. Good. He glanced around. We're pretty busy today. I can see that. He smiled politely before walking away to greet another guest. Clara quietly slipped her hand into mine. They're distracted. I nodded. That's all. But something already felt different. As more guests arrived, I began noticing conversations around us. Several people congratulated Derek for everything he'd done to help Logan succeed. Vanessa happily accepted compliment after compliment. "You two must be so proud. We really gave him every opportunity. He worked hard, but we sacrificed a lot too." I simply smiled. There was no reason to interrupt. This wasn't about recognition. It never had been. A little later, Logan finally came over. "Hey, Grandpa." He gave me a quick handshake. No hug. No smile. "I'm glad you came. We wouldn't have missed it." He looked distracted. "I've got to get back. The speeches start soon." Before leaving, he added, "Try to keep your phones on silent." Then he walked away. Clara looked at me. That was short. He's excited. I kept making excuses. Even then. The ceremony began just before sunset. Rows of white chairs faced a small wooden stage overlooking the lake. The setting was breathtaking. One by one, family members gave speeches. A professor praised Logan's determination. One of his closest friends talked about late-night study sessions. Vanessa stood at the podium wiping away tears. "We're so proud of the man you've become." Everyone applauded. Then Derek spoke. "I've always believed success comes from hard work." Another round of applause. Finally, Logan stepped onto the stage. He thanked his professors, his classmates, his roommates, his parents. Everyone smiled proudly. Then he laughed. "You know, there are always people who think they deserve credit for someone else's success." The crowd chuckled. I assumed he was joking about social media. Then he looked directly at me. "And if I'm being honest, the two people who deserve absolutely zero credit for where I am today are my grandparents." For a second, the entire place went silent. I honestly thought I had misunderstood him. Then Logan smiled. "They never understood my generation. They just showed up to things and acted like that was enough." Laughter spread through the audience. Someone behind me actually clapped. I felt Clara's hand tighten around mine. Before I could even process what had happened, Vanessa laughed into her microphone. "Let's be honest. They've been extra baggage for years." More laughter. Then Derek smiled, nodded toward the stage, and started applauding. My own son. The little boy I had spent my entire life protecting. The man whose education, wedding, house, and family I had quietly financed for years, was applauding while hundreds of strangers laughed at his parents. I slowly turned toward Clara. Tears were running down her face. Not loud sobbing, just silent tears. The kind that come when someone's heart finally breaks. She whispered one sentence. "I don't want to stay here." Neither did I. Without saying another word, I reached inside my jacket. My fingers touched the thick ivory envelope. For just a moment, I looked down at it. One signature, one gift, $1 million. Everything Logan had no idea was waiting for him. Then I quietly slid the envelope back into my inside pocket. I stood up, took Clara's hand, and together we began walking toward the parking lot. Nobody stopped us. Nobody called our names. Nobody asked why we were leaving. Behind us, the applause continued. People laughed. Music started playing again. The party carried on as if nothing had happened. Halfway across the parking lot, Clara finally spoke. "Elliot." I opened the passenger door for her. "Yes?" She looked at me with tears still filling her eyes. "What was in that envelope?" I looked back toward the lights reflecting across the lake. Then I quietly answered, "The future they just threw away." The drive home was completely silent. The only sounds inside the truck were the tires rolling across the highway and the occasional click of the turn signal. Neither Clara nor I said a word for nearly 30 minutes. I kept both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, replaying every second of that speech in my mind. Not because Logan had insulted me. I could survive an insult. What I couldn't get out of my head was watching Derek applaud while his own parents were being humiliated. That image hurt more than Logan's words ever could. When we finally pulled into our driveway, Clara didn't get out immediately. She just sat there looking through the windshield. Then she quietly asked, "Did we fail somewhere?" I turned toward her. "What do you mean?" She wiped another tear from her cheek. "We raised Derek. We loved him. We taught him respect. So how did we end up here? I didn't have an answer. For the first time in decades, I honestly didn't know. We walked inside our house without turning on the television. Clara made 2 cups of coffee even though it was almost 9 o'clock at night. Neither of us touched them. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we had planned Derek's future, written checks for his education, celebrated birthdays, wrapped Christmas presents, dreamed about retirement. Now it felt strangely empty. Finally, Clara looked at me and said something I never thought I would hear. "I'm done, Elliot." I looked up. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying anymore. She simply looked exhausted. "I don't mean I'm done loving them. I don't think a mother ever stops. But I'm done begging people to value us." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm done pretending this doesn't hurt." I reached across the table and held her hand. "So am I." That was the moment everything changed. Not because I suddenly hated my family. I didn't. I still loved every one of them. But for the first time, I loved my wife enough to stop allowing people to hurt her. I stood up, walked into my home office, and took the ivory envelope out of my jacket. I stared at it for a long time. $1 million. Years of careful investing, years of planning, years of imagining the look on Logan's face when I handed it to him. That future no longer existed. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. Even though it was late, he answered. "Elliot? I'm sorry for calling this hour." "No problem. Is everything all right?" I looked at the envelope one last time. "No. But it will be. I need to stop the trust." There was a brief silence. "You mean postpone it?" "I mean cancel it. Completely." He hesitated. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain about anything. I'll begin the paperwork first thing tomorrow morning." "Thank you." After ending the call, I opened my laptop. There were dozens of automatic payments leaving my account every month. Some I had almost forgotten about. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, health insurance supplements, monthly transfers, educational investments, emergency savings contributions. I clicked through every account one by one, not canceling them yet, just looking. For years, those payments had been my way of saying, "I love you." That night, I realized something painful. Love given without respect eventually becomes expectation. Around midnight, Clara walked quietly into my office. She rested a hand on my shoulder. "What are you doing?" I looked up at her. "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing us." She leaned down and kissed my forehead. "I've been waiting a long time to hear you say that." The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For years, I had started my mornings thinking about what my family needed. That morning, I asked myself a different question. What does my wife deserve after standing beside me for 38 years? The answer came immediately: peace, respect, freedom. By 8 o'clock, my attorney had already started canceling the $1 million trust. By 9, I had scheduled another meeting, not to create a new inheritance, to rewrite my entire estate plan. For the first time in decades, my future no longer revolved around people who had treated our love like an obligation. It revolved around protecting the one person who had never once taken me for granted. And before the sun set that evening, I made one more decision. Every dollar that had quietly supported Derek's family for years was about to stop. The following Monday felt strangely peaceful, not because my problems had disappeared, because for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending they didn't exist. I arrived at my attorney's office at exactly 9 o'clock. He already had several folders waiting for me. "Good morning, Elliot." "Morning." He studied my face for a moment. "You look different." "I feel different." We sat down. He slid the trust documents across the table one last time. "This is your final opportunity to change your mind." I opened the folder. At the top of the first page was Logan's name. Just seeing it made me remember the little boy who used to run into my arms after Little League games. The little boy who used to call every Saturday asking if Grandpa wanted to go fishing. I smiled sadly. I'll always love that little boy. My attorney quietly nodded. But he's not the young man who stood on that stage. I picked up the pen. Without hesitation, I signed every page. Just like that, the $1 million trust no longer belonged to Logan. My attorney placed the signed documents into another folder. What would you like to do with the assets? I didn't even need to think. I want every dollar to help students who work hard, respect their families, and would never take generosity for granted. He smiled. A scholarship fund? Yes. In my wife's name. He looked pleasantly surprised. Clara doesn't know about this, does she? Not yet. I've spent my whole life taking care of everyone else. It's her turn now. By the end of the meeting, everything had been finalized. The Clara Matthews Family Scholarship would provide full university scholarships to deserving students every year. Knowing that money would change grateful lives instead of feeding entitlement gave me a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. When I got home, Clara was watering flowers in the backyard. She smiled. How did it go? I walked over and kissed her forehead. I think we just helped a lot of young people. She looked confused. I'll explain tonight. That evening after dinner, I opened my laptop again. This time, I wasn't reviewing payments. I was ending them, one by one. The homeowner's insurance policy, canceled. The automatic property tax payment, canceled. The monthly deposit into Derek's checking account, canceled. The private health insurance supplement, canceled. The emergency savings contribution, canceled. The graduate school investment account I had quietly built for Logan, closed. Each click felt strangely quiet. No anger, no revenge, just final. I wasn't taking anything away that belonged to them. I was simply stopping gifts they had mistaken for obligations. Before shutting my laptop, I looked at the calendar. Nearly 8 years. That was how long those automatic payments had been running. 8 years. Without a single thank you. The first phone call came 6 days later. It was Derek. Hey, Dad. His voice sounded nervous. Everything all right? I was actually going to ask you the same thing. What do you mean? Our bank says the monthly transfer didn't come through. I remained calm. That's correct. A long silence followed. I figured it was probably a banking mistake. No, it wasn't. Another silence. So, are you sending it later? No, Derek. I'm not. His voice changed immediately. What do you mean you're not? I mean exactly what I said. That support has ended. He sounded completely shocked. But, Dad, we count on that money. I quietly answered, I know. He didn't say anything for several seconds. Then he asked, did we do something wrong? For just a moment I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because after everything that had happened, he still didn't know. You'll figure it out. I ended the call. 3 hours later, Vanessa called. She didn't even ask how I was. Elliot, there has to be some misunderstanding. There isn't. We've already planned this month's budget. I'm sure you'll adjust. Her tone became sharper. You can't suddenly stop helping us. I looked around my living room, the same room where Clara had cried after the graduation party. I can. And I have. She raised her voice. This affects all of us. I answered quietly. So did your words. Then I hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, reality started arriving at their front door. Without the monthly support, Derek's carefully balanced finances began falling apart. The luxury SUV payment suddenly became difficult. Property taxes were no longer quietly disappearing before the due date. Insurance premiums had to come from their own account. Credit card balances started growing. For the first time in years, they were living on only what they earned. Then came the biggest surprise. The university announced the creation of the Clara Matthews Family Scholarship. The local newspaper ran a feature story. A television station even interviewed Clara and me. The reporter asked, what inspired this incredible donation? I smiled. We wanted to invest in young people who understand that character matters as much as achievement. A week later, Derek called again. This time, he wasn't asking about the monthly payments. His voice was shaking. Dad, was Logan supposed to receive that money? Yes. $1 million? Yes. There was another long silence. He says Grandpa's trust disappeared. It didn't disappear. I gave it to people who would appreciate it. Dad, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious. When Logan finally called, I almost didn't answer. His voice sounded nothing like it had at graduation. Grandpa, I just found out. I know. I didn't think. He stopped speaking, then quietly asked, Is it true? Every word. You gave it away? Yes. I was counting on graduate school. I closed my eyes. So was I. What? I was counting on giving my grandson the opportunity of a lifetime. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I said something he would remember forever. You publicly told the world I had contributed nothing to your success. So I decided not to contribute to your future either. He started crying. I was showing off. I know. I didn't mean it. I believe you. But intentions don't erase consequences. When the call ended, I wasn't happy. I wasn't celebrating. I simply accepted that some lessons are expensive, and this one would cost my family far more than money. Almost 3 months passed before I heard anything meaningful from my family. Not excuses, not complaints, not demands. Silence. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't ringing because someone needed money. Clara and I slowly settled into a different routine. We ate dinner together every evening. We took long walks through the neighborhood. On Saturday mornings, we drove to a small farmer's market a few towns over. Clara would always come home with fresh flowers, and I'd tease her that we were running out of room to put them. She'd smile and say, After everything we've been through, I think we've earned fresh flowers. For the first time in a long time, our home felt peaceful. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Derek. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Hello. His voice sounded nothing like it had before. Dad, can we meet? I looked across the room at Clara. She quietly nodded. When? Whenever you're willing. We agreed to meet the following Saturday at a quiet coffee shop halfway between our homes. When Clara and I arrived, Derek was already sitting there. I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted. The expensive watch was gone. His tailored suits had been replaced by a plain button-down shirt. The confidence he always carried had disappeared. A few minutes later, Vanessa walked in. She looked just as different. Then Logan arrived. He avoided eye contact as he quietly sat beside his parents. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Derek looked at me. I owe you an apology. I didn't answer. He continued. I thought everything we built ourselves. I honestly believed we were independent. I quietly asked, Did you ever wonder why things always seem to work out? He lowered his head. I never asked. No, you never did. I reached into the folder I had brought with me. One by one, I placed documents on the table. College tuition payments, wedding invoices, mortgage records, insurance policies, property tax receipts, canceled checks, bank transfers, investment statements, educational accounts, medical insurance payments, 8 years of monthly deposits. Every single payment was documented. Every sacrifice had a date. Every gift had a dollar amount. Logan slowly picked up one of the statements. His eyes widened. You paid for my private school? Yes. He picked up another. My health insurance? Yes. Another. My college investment account? Yes. By the time he reached the final page, his hands were shaking. He whispered, I never knew. I nodded. I know. Vanessa finally began crying. Real tears. Not the polite tears people cry in public. The kind that come when denial finally disappears. I thought Derek's bonuses covered everything. I looked at her calmly. They didn't. She covered her face with both hands. Oh my God. Derek couldn't even look at me anymore. I spent years believing I had become successful on my own. I answered quietly, You worked hard. I'll never take that away from you. But every time life knocked you down, I was standing underneath, making sure you never hit the ground. His shoulders began shaking. I never even thanked you. No, you didn't. Then Logan looked directly at Clara. His voice cracked. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I was trying to impress my friends. I thought making jokes would make me sound funny." Clara reached across the table and gently squeezed his hand. "I believe you're sorry." He looked at me. "Grandpa, I'll spend the rest of my life making this right." I looked into my grandson's eyes. For the first time in years, I saw humility. Not arrogance, not entitlement, just regret. I answered honestly, "I forgive you." Relief immediately appeared on all three of their faces. Then I continued, "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." Their expressions changed again. I looked at Logan. "I meant it when I forgave you. But the scholarship stays exactly where it is. I won't recreate your trust." I turned toward Derek. "I forgive you too. But I will never resume supporting your household." Finally, I looked at Vanessa. "I truly hope you rebuild your life. But not with money that should have been spent on Clara after everything she sacrificed." No one argued. No one raised their voice. Because deep down, they already knew I was right. Before we left, Derek quietly asked one final question. "So, is there anything we can do?" I stood up slowly. "There is. Spend the rest of your lives treating people with respect before they have nothing left to give." Then Clara and I walked away. We never looked back. A few months later, we sold our house in Franklin. Not because we had to, because we wanted a fresh beginning. We bought a beautiful little home near the coast of Beaufort, South Carolina. Nothing extravagant. Just a peaceful place where we could hear the ocean in the mornings and watch the sunset from our back porch every evening. Clara finally got the kitchen she had dreamed about for nearly 20 years. White cabinets, a large island, big windows overlooking the water. Every morning she makes coffee there with the biggest smile on her face. Sometimes I catch myself watching her instead of the sunrise. It reminds me that I almost spent the rest of my life taking care of everyone except the one person who had never stopped taking care of me. Derek, Vanessa, and Logan still send birthday cards. Sometimes they write long letters. Sometimes they simply say they're thinking about us. I wish them well. I truly do. But some chapters are meant to end. Not because love disappears, but because peace finally becomes more important than carrying old pain. Today, Clara and I spend our time traveling, volunteering, and helping students through the scholarship that now bears her name. Every year we meet young people whose gratitude fills the space where disappointment used to live. And every time one of those students shakes my hand and says, "Thank you for believing in me," I'm reminded that generosity should always be planted where it can grow. Because I learned the hardest lesson of my life at 60 years old. Money can change someone's future, but respect is what determines whether they deserve to be part of yours. Looking back, I don't hate my son, my daughter-in-law, or even my grandson. I simply learned that love without respect will eventually break your heart. Walking away wasn't about revenge. It was about choosing peace, protecting my wife, and finally valuing ourselves after years of putting everyone else first. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you learn from my journey? Do you think I did the right thing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you learned something valuable from my story, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us daily. Until next time, take care of yourself and never let anyone make you feel like your kindness has no value.